My name is Kirsten, 34 years old, and I never thought my generosity would end with a handprint on my face. My sister Sophia and I grew up close, but life pulled us apart. As an investment manager, I secretly arranged to pay for her entire wedding, hoping to rebuild our bond. She believed our father was funding everything and wielded that unlimited budget like a weapon. When I suggested sage green for her bridesmaids in that bridal boutique, her palm connected with my cheek so hard it echoed. Something inside me broke and reset. If you're watching this from a place where family drama hits close to home, give this video a like and subscribe to join others who've learned to stand up for themselves. Growing up, our family was like many others until tragedy struck. Our mother died unexpectedly from an aneurysm when I was 14, and Sophia was only 8. The loss devastated us all, but especially my little sister, who barely understood what had happened. Our father, William, a dedicated accountant at a mid-sized firm, was suddenly thrust into single parenthood while processing his own grief. I still remember the day after the funeral, watching my father stare blankly at a pile of bills at our kitchen table, his eyes red-rimmed and vacant. That night, I silently stepped into a role no teenager should have to assume. I started making Sophia's lunches, checking her homework, and braiding her hair the way Mom used to. Dad worked increasingly long hours to keep our family afloat financially, leaving me to handle most of the daily childcare. For 3 years, this became our new normal. I cooked simple meals, attended Sophia's parent-teacher conferences beside my exhausted father, and postponed many typical teenage experiences. While friends went to parties and football games, I was teaching Sophia to navigate puberty and helping her process her grief in waves that kept returning. We built a bond that felt unbreakable, sisters forced into a closer relationship by circumstance. Everything changed again when Dad met Jessica at a company function. She was a vivacious marketing executive with a loud laugh and designer clothes. By the time I turned 18, they were married, and Jessica moved into our family home with her extensive shoe collection and strong opinions about how things should be done. Initially, I was hopeful. Jessica seemed to genuinely care for my father, bringing light back into his eyes. Perhaps now I could reclaim some of my youth before college. Those hopes dimmed quickly as Jessica established herself not as a partner in our existing family structure, but as someone determined to reshape it entirely. Jessica had never had children and found the role of stepmother challenging. Rather than working with the systems I had carefully established to keep our household running, she implemented her own. She indulged Sophia, now 11, with material items and minimal boundaries. When I expressed concern about this parenting approach, Jessica would bristle. While I was preparing for college, Dad pulled me aside one evening. Eyes downcast, he explained that with Jessica now in the family, money would be tighter than expected. Her lifestyle came with expenses, and she had accumulated significant debt that they were now addressing together. The college fund my mother had started was needed elsewhere. Community college would have to do, he said, at least until things stabilized financially. I swallowed my disappointment and enrolled locally, working 2 part-time jobs while continuing to help with Sophia. Meanwhile, Jessica took Sophia shopping for designer clothes and the latest gadgets. The contrast was painful, but I told myself it was temporary. I would build my own path. As Sophia entered her teenage years under Jessica's influence, her attitude toward me shifted. The sister who once looked up to me now rolled her eyes at my suggestions and mocked my discount store clothes. When I would remind her about homework or responsibilities, she would retort, "You are not my mother," a statement that cut deeper than she knew. Jessica would smile indulgently at these moments, sometimes adding, "Let her be a normal teenager, Kirsten. Not everyone needs to be as serious as you." By 22, I had completed my associate degree in finance and found an entry-level position at an investment firm. I moved into a tiny studio apartment 30 minutes away, a distance that felt necessary for my sanity. The physical space allowed me to focus on building my career without the daily reminders of my shifting family dynamics. Over the next decade, I poured myself into work. Starting in customer service, I took night classes to complete my bachelor's degree and eventually earned certifications in financial planning and investment management. Every promotion felt like validation that my path, though not what I had originally envisioned, was leading somewhere worthwhile. By 30, I had become one of the youngest senior investment managers at my firm, with a portfolio of high net worth clients and a reputation for conservative but consistently successful strategies. My tiny studio had been replaced by a comfortable two-bedroom condo overlooking the city park. Financial security so elusive in my youth was finally mine. During these years, my relationship with my family remained complicated. I visited for major holidays and called my father weekly, but interactions with Jessica and Sophia were strained and superficial. Sophia had dropped out of college after 2 semesters, cycling through a series of retail jobs while living at home. Jessica continued to enable her lack of direction, while my father avoided conflict by retreating further into his work. Then came the call that would set everything in motion. My father, sounding simultaneously excited and nervous, announced that Sophia was engaged to Jeremy, a banking associate. She had been dating for 14 months. They wanted a June wedding just 7 months away. What should have been a simple congratulatory conversation took an awkward turn when my father cleared his throat and mentioned that Sophia had her heart set on a certain type of wedding, an expensive type. With Jessica's spending habits and his upcoming retirement, they simply couldn't afford what Sophia envisioned. His voice lowered to almost a whisper as he asked if I might be in a position to help. Something about his hesitant request and the years of complicated feelings collided in that moment. Despite everything, I loved my sister. Perhaps this grand gesture could be the bridge that would finally reconnect us. I thought of my healthy investment portfolio and the substantial bonus I had recently received. Rather than simply writing a check, I devised a plan that felt both generous and protective of my feelings. I met my father for coffee 2 days later and proposed an arrangement. I would set up a special credit card linked directly to my account. He could present this to Sophia as his own, with the understanding that I was actually funding everything. This way, I could give Sophia her dream wedding without her feeling indebted to me or Jessica feeling outshone. Dad looked relieved and grateful, clasping my hand across the table. "You always were the responsible one," he said, a compliment that carried the weight of all the childhood I had sacrificed. We agreed that the wedding budget would be generous, but not unlimited, $50,000, an amount that seemed appropriate for a lovely celebration without encouraging excessive waste. What neither of us anticipated was how quickly warning signs would appear. The very next day, Sophia texted our family group chat with links to venues that started at $20,000 just for the space rental. When Dad gently mentioned looking at more affordable options, Sophia responded with a crying emoji and the message, "I thought you wanted me to have a special day. Guess I was wrong." That evening, Dad called to tell me Sophia was very upset. He asked if we could possibly stretch the budget a bit more. This would be her only wedding after all. Already I felt the boundaries I had tried to establish bending under emotional pressure. Nevertheless, I agreed to increase the budget to $60,000, hoping that would be sufficient for even an extravagant celebration. Looking back, I should have recognized how this pattern reflected our entire relationship. But at the time, I was caught up in a fantasy that my financial contribution could heal years of emotional distance. I truly believed that helping create Sophia's perfect day would finally earn me the sisterly relationship I had always longed for. How wrong I was! The first official wedding planning meeting took place at Riverview Gardens, an upscale venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city river. Sophia had already toured the space without me and declared it perfect, before any discussion of cost. I arrived 15 minutes early, parking my sensible sedan beside luxury cars that made it look decidedly out of place. Inside, I found Sophia, already deep in conversation with Lisa Peterson, a wedding planner whose reputation for extravagant events preceded her. Lisa greeted me with a firm handshake and a professional smile that revealed nothing about what Sophia might have already told her about me. Sophia barely acknowledged my arrival, continuing her animated description of her vision. "I want that magical feeling, you know, like a fairy tale, but sophisticated. Romantic lighting, cascading flowers, the works." Lisa nodded appreciatively, making notes on a sleek tablet. I stood awkwardly to the side, unsure of my role in this scenario. When I tried to join the conversation with a question about the timeline, Sophia cut me off mid-sentence. "Kirsten is just here as moral support," she told Lisa with a dismissive wave. "Dad is handling all the financial decisions." Lisa glanced at me briefly before returning her attention to Sophia. For the next hour, I watched my sister select the most premium option for every aspect of her wedding. The venue package alone was $26,000, not including the additional features she kept adding. Custom lighting design, upgraded chairs, exclusive use of the garden terrace for photos. With each addition, I calculated the rapidly diminishing budget in my head. When Lisa stepped away to take a call, I gently suggested to Sophia that we might want to prioritize what elements were most important to her. Just trying to be practical, I added quickly, seeing her expression darken. "Practical is boring," she responded, scrolling through photos of elaborate centerpieces on her phone. "This is my one special day, Kirsten. Not everything needs to be budget-conscious like your life." The comment stung, but I swallowed my response. This was her wedding after all. Perhaps my financial prudence did seem boring from her perspective. Before I could formulate a more diplomatic approach, Lisa returned with suggestions for the rehearsal dinner. What had originally been discussed as a simple meal for the wedding party had evolved into a proposal for a catered event at an exclusive restaurant on the other side of town. When Lisa mentioned flying in a specific type of orchid that Sophia had seen in a celebrity wedding post, I felt a twinge of alarm. The florals alone were approaching the cost of a decent used car. Yet each time I tried to guide the conversation toward more reasonable options, Sophia would turn to Lisa and say something like, "My sister is always so worried about money, as though my concern was a personal failing rather than practical. Wisdom." By the end of the meeting, Lisa had compiled a preliminary budget that, if approved, would exceed our agreed-upon amount by nearly $20,000. I left with a throbbing headache and the sinking feeling that I had severely underestimated what I was getting myself into. The following week, I met privately with Lisa, under the pretense of confirming some details. The real purpose was to establish some financial guardrails. In her elegant office, decorated with photos of celebrity weddings, I explained that while we wanted Sophia to have a beautiful day, certain aspects of the current plan needed adjustment. Lisa was more understanding than I expected. Between us, she confided, "I see this situation frequently. Excitement can sometimes overshadow practicality." She agreed to subtly guide Sophia toward more reasonable choices without explicitly mentioning budget constraints. It was during a cake tasting appointment that I first met Jeremy, Sophia's fiancé. He arrived late, apologizing profusely about a work meeting that had run over. Where I had expected someone as entitled as my sister had become, I found instead a thoughtful young man with a warm smile and genuine manner. He greeted me with a hug, thanking me for supporting Sophia through the planning process. As we sampled various cake flavors, I observed Jeremy's interactions with my sister. He gently tempered some of her more extravagant ideas, suggesting that perhaps they did not need a 7-tier cake for 120 guests. Sophia pouted briefly, but acquiesced, when he kissed her cheek and whispered something that made her laugh. When Sophia went to the restroom, Jeremy turned to me with a more serious expression. "I want you to know, I really appreciate you being here for her," he said. "Sophia speaks very highly of how you helped raise her after your mom passed. That cannot have been easy for you." His acknowledgement of my sacrifice, something my own family rarely mentioned, caught me off guard. I managed a thank you while blinking back unexpected tears. As we continued discussing wedding details, I noticed Jeremy's visible discomfort when Sophia insisted on the most expensive cake option, complete with hand-painted sugar flowers and gold leaf accents. Later, as we walked to our cars, Jeremy hung back slightly to speak with me privately. "I hope all this," he gestured vaguely toward the bakery, "is not causing financial strain for your dad. I know Sophia has grand ideas, and I have tried to suggest we contribute more ourselves, but..." I assured him everything was under control, maintaining the fiction that our father was covering the expenses. Jeremy seemed relieved, though still concerned. "I am trying to save for our future home," he explained. "Sometimes I worry about starting our marriage with such an expensive celebration." His practicality was refreshing, and I found myself wondering how he and my materialistic sister had connected. As if reading my thoughts, he smiled and said, "She has the biggest heart under all that bravado. When my mom was sick last year, Sophia was there every day, bringing little gifts and making her laugh. That is the real Sophia." I wanted to believe him. Perhaps the sister I remembered from our childhood still existed somewhere beneath the entitled behavior I had witnessed. This glimmer of hope renewed my commitment to funding the wedding despite the growing cost and my sister's dismissive treatment. That hope dimmed considerably during a family dinner the following weekend. Sophia dominated the conversation with wedding details, repeatedly mentioning how she had convinced Dad to upgrade various elements. Dad smiled weakly across the table, avoiding my eyes. Jessica enthusiastically encouraged each elaboration, suggesting even more extravagant additions. When I offered to help address invitations, Sophia exchanged a look with Jessica. Actually, she said, my friend Megan is helping me with all that. She has better handwriting, no offense. The casual dismissal of my offer stung more than it should have. After dinner, Sophia pulled out a photo album to show Jeremy childhood pictures. The album, curated by Jessica years earlier, featured dozens of photos of Sophia at various ages, with our father and Jessica prominently included. The few images containing me were group shots, where I stood slightly apart, my adolescent face serious with premature responsibility. As Jeremy commented on how cute Sophia was as a child, Jessica chimed in with stories of family vacations and special moments, subtly revising history to enhance her own role in Sophia's upbringing. I sat silently wondering if I was the only one who remembered the reality. Jessica had not entered our lives until Sophia was 11, long after many of the events being discussed. Throughout the evening, I kept reminding myself that the wedding was an investment in our future relationship. Once Sophia recognized the magnitude of my generosity, surely things would change. With each dismissive comment and historical revision, I told myself to be patient. The big day would make everything worthwhile. I could not have imagined how wrong I would be. The bridesmaid announcement came via a group text message while I was in a client meeting. Sophia had created a graphic with her wedding colors and a list of her wedding party. My eyes scanned the names Megan Andrews, maid of honor, followed by 4 bridesmaids with my name appearing last. I stared at the phone, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Not only was I not the maid of honor, but I had been relegated to the bottom position in the wedding party below. Even college acquaintances, Sophia rarely mentioned. I excused myself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway, trying to process my feelings. While I had not explicitly expected to be maid of honor, the clear demotion to least important bridesmaid felt deliberate and hurtful. Sophia and I had our issues, but I was still her only sister and was secretly funding her entire celebration. That evening, I called Sophia, determined to have an honest conversation about my feelings. She answered on the 5th ring, sounding distracted with a television playing loudly in the background. "Can we talk about the bridesmaid announcement?" I asked, working to keep my voice even. "What about it?" She sounded bored already. "I guess I was surprised to be listed last and that you chose Megan as your maid of honor. She is a relatively new friend, right?" Sophia sighed dramatically. "Megan and I have gotten really close. She understands me better, and honestly, she has more time to help with wedding stuff. You are always working." I bit back the obvious response that my always working was what made her wedding possible in the first place. Instead, I tried another approach. "I would like to be more involved, Sophia. I could make time for important things like dress shopping or venue visits. No offense, Kirsten, but your taste is kind of basic. Megan works at a fashion boutique, so she actually knows what is trending." Her dismissal was so casual it took my breath away. When I remained silent, Sophia added, "Do not make this weird, okay? You are still a bridesmaid. I have got to go. Jeremy is calling. Love you, bye." The call ended before I could respond, leaving me with the distinct feeling I had just been patted on the head and sent away. The rational part of my brain suggested canceling the credit card immediately, but the hopeful part that still yearned for sisterly connection argued for patience. A week later, Megan sent a group email about the bachelorette party planned as a 4-day trip to a luxury resort in Miami. The estimated cost per attendant was nearly $2,000, not including flights. The email specified that as bridesmaids, we were expected to split the bride's expenses equally. This meant I would effectively be paying twice for Sophia's pre-wedding celebration on top of the wedding itself. When I called to discuss a more reasonable alternative, perhaps a nice local weekend, Sophia accused me of trying to ruin her special pre-wedding celebration because I was jealous of her friends. Our father, overhearing Sophia's side of the call, meekly suggested she consider my perspective. Jessica immediately countered, defending Sophia's vision. If Kirsten cannot afford the bachelorette trip, perhaps she should have considered that before agreeing to be a bridesmaid, Jessica said loudly enough for me to hear through the phone. The migraines began shortly after this conversation. Stress-induced, my doctor said, recommending meditation and examining which situations in my life might be causing such tension. I did not need a medical degree to identify the source. Jeremy noticed the strain during a chance meeting at a local coffee shop. He joined me at my table, expressing concern about the dark circles under my eyes. I deflected, asking about his work and wedding preparations, but his perceptiveness caught me off guard. "Something is going on between you and Sophia," he observed quietly. "She gets defensive whenever I mention you lately." I considered my response carefully. "Your fiancé and I have different perspectives on many things. I hope that after the wedding we can find more common ground." Jeremy stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Sophia can be intense about getting her way. I love her spirit, but sometimes I worry about how she treats people who care about her." His insight into my sister's character was both validating and concerning. If her future husband recognized these patterns, was there any hope they would ever change? As the wedding date approached, Sophia's demands grew increasingly extravagant. What had begun as a $60,000 budget was rapidly approaching $80,000. Each time I tried to establish a boundary through my father, Sophia would respond with tears or anger until she got her way. Lisa, the wedding planner, pulled me aside during a venue walk-through. "I need to discuss something delicate," she said, guiding me to a private corner. "Your sister has been making significant changes to the plans we have previously approved. The additional requests are creating substantial budget overages." The chef added white truffle risotto at an extra $40 per plate. The custom lighting design has doubled in price. I promised to address it, but already knew how the conversation would go. The moment I mentioned scaling back, Sophia would accuse me of trying to diminish her special day. So instead, I approved the changes, watching my carefully managed investment account diminish with each extravagance. The flower budget became a particular source of contention. Sophia had fallen in love with a floral installation she had seen at a celebrity wedding requiring thousands of imported blooms. When I suggested using seasonal local flowers, she erupted. "Why are you so determined to make everything cheap and boring?" she demanded during a family dinner. "Dad said I could have the flowers I want." Our father, caught in his own deception, looked miserably at his plate. "I just think we need to be reasonable, honey," he attempted weakly. Sophia turned to him with tears already forming. "You promised me my dream wedding," she cried. "Are you taking that back now?" Jessica immediately jumped to her defense. "William, we cannot start cutting corners now. The flowers are what people will remember." I watched my father cave in real time, patting Sophia's hand and assuring her she could have whatever flowers she desired. Later, he called me privately to approve the additional $12,000 expense, his voice strained with the awareness that he was asking me to fund yet another unreasonable demand. The final straw before the bridal shop incident came when I discovered I had not been included in the family wedding shower hosted by Jessica. I learned about the event after it occurred when Sophia posted photos on social media. The images showed Jessica, my father, and 20 other guests celebrating, with Sophia opening gifts and playing wedding-themed games in our family home. When I called my father to ask why I had not been invited, he sounded genuinely confused. "Jessica organized everything. I assumed she had invited you." A text to Jessica received a breezy response. "Oh, it was very last minute. I thought you would be too busy with work to attend a midweek afternoon event. We know how important your career is to you." The deliberate exclusion from a family event, especially one celebrating a wedding I was secretly funding, felt like a calculated insult. That night, I seriously contemplated ending my financial support entirely. Yet something held me back, some lingering hope that the wedding itself would somehow heal our fractured relationship. Then came the bridal boutique appointment that would change everything. The invitation came unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning, a text from Sophia that seemed uncharacteristically warm. Final dress fitting tomorrow at 11. Could really use your opinion on some details. Followed by a smiley face emoji, something she rarely included in messages to me. After weeks of being sidelined and dismissed, this olive branch felt significant. Perhaps Sophia was finally recognizing the importance of including her sister in these special moments. I rearranged my work schedule, canceling 2 client meetings to accommodate the appointment. The morning of the fitting, Sophia called me, her voice unusually friendly. "Bring comfortable shoes," she advised. "These appointments can run long and I really want your input on everything." Her consideration was so unexpected that I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this was the turning point I had been waiting for. I selected a nice blouse and skirt for the occasion, even adding a bit more makeup than usual. This felt important, like a chance to reset our relationship. When I arrived at Elegance Bridal, an exclusive boutique in the upscale part of downtown Sofia, was already there chatting animatedly with the salon director. The shop was elegant without being ostentatious, with plush white seating and soft lighting that flattered everyone. Sophia waved me over enthusiastically. "This is my sister Kirsten," she announced to the director, linking her arm through mine as if we were the best of friends. I could not remember the last time she had touched me with such affection. The director, an elegant woman named Vivian, welcomed me warmly. "We have champagne and refreshments set up in the private viewing area," she explained, gesturing toward a raised platform surrounded by mirrors and comfortable seating. Sophia squeezed my arm. "I saved the best dress for today so you could see it," she confided. I was touched by this inclusion, especially after feeling so peripheral to the entire wedding process. As we sipped champagne and nibbled on delicate pastries, Sophia showed me photos of the 4 dresses she had already considered and eliminated. For once, she actually seemed interested in my opinions, nodding thoughtfully at my comments. The conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years, touching on shared childhood memories and future hopes. When Vivian returned to announce the dress was ready, Sophia practically bounced with excitement. "Wait here," she instructed me. "I want to see your honest reaction when I come out." Left alone in the viewing area, I felt a tentative happiness. This was the sister connection I had been missing, the relationship I had hoped my financial contribution might help restore. Perhaps everything, the difficult planning process, the excessive expenses, the emotional roller coaster, was worth it for this moment of genuine sisterly bonding. When Sophia emerged in her wedding gown, I gasped audibly. The dress was stunning, a fitted silhouette with delicate lace details and a dramatic cathedral train. More importantly, it perfectly suited her personality and style. This was unmistakably Sophia's dress, elegant, but with the dramatic flair she had always loved. "This is the one," I said softly, unexpectedly moved by the sight of my little sister as a bride. "You really think so?" she asked, her expression suddenly vulnerable, in a way I rarely saw anymore. "Absolutely. You look beautiful, Sophia. Mom would have been so proud." At the mention of our mother, tears filled her eyes. For a brief, precious moment, we were just 2 sisters, sharing something sacred, our complicated history temporarily set aside. Vivian and her assistant helped Sophia change into her reception dress, a sleeker design that would allow for more comfortable movement during the celebration. As Sophia twirled before the mirrors, pleased with her reflection, the conversation naturally turned to the bridesmaid dresses. "So I have narrowed it down to 2 colors," Sophia explained, showing me swatches of fabric, a deep burgundy, or this midnight blue. "What do you think?" I studied the samples thoughtfully, considering how they would complement the venue and season. While both were beautiful, something felt off about them with the overall wedding aesthetic she had described. "These are lovely," I said carefully. "But what about something softer to complement your dress, perhaps a sage green? It would look beautiful with the garden venue and work well with the floral arrangements you have chosen." The shift in Sophia's demeanor was immediate and jarring. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of irritation that seemed wildly disproportionate to my gentle suggestion. "Sage green," she repeated, her voice rising. "Are you serious right now?" Confused by her reaction, I tried to explain my thinking. The garden backdrop and those cream roses you selected would look stunning with a soft green. I was just... Stop! Sophia interrupted, her face flushing. I have been planning this for months. Every detail has been carefully considered, and you just waltz in and think you can change everything. I was stunned by the sudden hostility. I was only making a suggestion. Sophia, you asked for my opinion. No, Sophia said, her voice growing louder. What I asked for was your support, not for you to try and take over my wedding colors. The boutique had grown quiet, other customers and staff, now watching our interaction with uncomfortable expressions. I lowered my voice, trying to de-escalate the situation. I am sorry if I overstepped. Of course you should choose whatever colors you love. But Sophia was beyond reason now, working herself into the kind of tantrum I recognized from her childhood. You always do this, she accused. You always think you know better than everyone else. That is not fair, I protested quietly. I was only trying to help. Help, she scoffed. You have barely been involved in any of this, and now suddenly you are an expert on wedding colors. The irony of this accusation, when I had been deliberately excluded from most planning, was not lost on me, but I bit my tongue. Let us just drop it, okay? I suggested. The burgundy will be beautiful. But Sophia was not interested in reconciliation. She continued her tirade, bringing up perceived slights from years past, her voice echoing through the elegant showroom. Each accusation became more irrational than the last. According to her revised history, I had always been controlling, always trying to overshadow her special moments. As her rant escalated, I noticed Vivian discreetly ushering other customers to a different area of the store. The remaining staff stood awkwardly nearby, unsure whether to intervene. I tried once more to calm her. Sophia, people are staring. Let us discuss this privately. That was when it happened. Do not tell me what to do, Sophia shouted, and before I could react, her hand swung forward, connecting with my cheek in a slap that echoed through the silent boutique. Stop ruining my big day. This is not about you. The physical pain was nothing compared to the public humiliation and the emotional wound. My sister had actually struck me over a color suggestion for dresses I was secretly paying for. The boutique fell into complete silence, all eyes on us. Sophia, seemingly unaffected by what she had just done, turned back to Vivian. I want to see the burgundy samples for the bridesmaids now, she demanded, as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. I stood frozen, my cheek burning, unable to process what had just happened. Vivian shot me a concerned glance before reluctantly leading Sophia to the bridesmaid section. The store manager approached me quietly, touching my arm gently. Are you all right? She asked in a low voice. Would you like some water, or to step into our office for a moment? I shook my head, too embarrassed to speak, and retreated to the boutique's lavish bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I finally allowed the tears to come. As I stared at my reflection, the red mark on my cheek beginning to fade, a clarity I had been avoiding for years finally crystallized. This relationship was fundamentally broken, and no amount of money or grand gestures would fix it. My sister did not see me as someone to appreciate or respect. She saw me as someone to use and dismiss, and I had enabled this treatment for far too long. As I washed my face with cool water, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the family doormat. It was time to stand up for myself regardless of the consequences. With newfound resolve, I dried my tears, reapplied my makeup, and prepared to set a boundary that was long overdue. The solitude of my car became a sanctuary after the chaos of the bridal boutique. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the steering wheel, not yet driving anywhere, simply sitting in the parking lot as the full weight of what had transpired settled over me. The physical sting of the slap had faded, but the emotional wound felt raw and exposed. For 20 years, I had prioritized my sister's needs and happiness above my own. I had sacrificed college opportunities, worked multiple jobs, funded her wedding, all while accepting increasingly disrespectful treatment. The pattern was so ingrained that I had normalized it, constantly making excuses for Sophia's behavior and blaming myself when things went wrong. No more. With surprising steadiness, I reached for my phone and opened my banking app. A few taps brought me to the credit card section, where I selected the special card I had created for the wedding expenses. Without allowing myself a moment of doubt, I pressed the emergency cancel option, confirming my decision with my security password. A notification appeared instantly. Card successfully canceled. All pending authorizations have been declined. Next, I dialed the credit card company directly. After verifying my identity, I spoke with a representative named Marcus. "I need to understand exactly how much has been charged to this account so far," I explained. Marcus pulled up the information. "The total charges processed to date amount to $29,486.13, he confirmed. There was one pending authorization for $6,522 from Elegance Bridal Boutique that was declined when you canceled the card." I thanked him and ended the call, a strange calm settling over me. Nearly $30,000 had already been spent with nothing to show for it, except a sister who had publicly slapped me. The financial loss stung, but the clarity it brought felt almost worth the price. For several minutes I sat in contemplative silence, processing the magnitude of what I had just done. This action would have immediate and significant consequences. The wedding plans would be thrown into disarray. My family would be furious. The carefully maintained fiction about who was funding the celebration would be exposed. Yet beneath the anxiety about these consequences, I felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I had prioritized my own well-being over keeping the peace. The boundary I had just established was long overdue. With newfound resolve, I started the car and drove back toward the bridal boutique. I had no intention of going inside again, but something compelled me to witness the aftermath of my decision. Parking across the street, I had a clear view of the entrance while remaining unnoticed. Through the large display windows, I could see Sophia still in the reception dress, now surrounded by an array of bridesmaid gowns in various shades of burgundy. She looked animated and happy, completely unaffected by the scene she had caused earlier. Vivian and another consultant hovered nearby, their professional smiles not quite reaching their eyes. I watched as Sophia selected what appeared to be the most elaborate and likely most expensive of the bridesmaid options, nodding emphatically as she spoke to the consultants. Her entire demeanor radiated entitlement and certainty that her wishes would be fulfilled without question. After about 20 minutes, Vivian gathered the selected items and led Sophia toward the checkout counter. Even from a distance, I could see my sister's confident stride, the body language of someone who had never had to consider the consequence of her actions or words. The store manager joined them at the register, entering information into the computer. I imagined the total appearing on the screen: the wedding gown, reception dress, accessories, and now the sample bridesmaid dress, likely approaching $7,000 altogether. From my vantage point, I saw Sophia casually hand over the now-canceled credit card, completely unaware that her shopping spree was about to hit an unexpected roadblock. The manager ran the card through the system once, then again with a slight frown. She leaned closer to the screen, then said something to Sophia, her expression professionally apologetic. Even from across the street, I could see the shift in my sister's posture, the sudden tension in her shoulders. The manager appeared to be explaining something, likely that the card had been declined. Sophia's hand movements became agitated as she insisted the manager try again. After a third attempt, the manager shook her head definitively. She said something else, perhaps offering alternative payment options. Sophia frantically dug through her purse, presumably looking for another card, but I knew she would not find one with a high enough limit for this purchase. My sister lived perpetually beyond her means, a habit enabled by our father and Jessica. The color visibly drained from Sophia's face as the reality of the situation began to sink in. She pulled out her phone, her movements becoming increasingly desperate. I assumed she was calling our father, the person she believed was funding everything. Sure enough, within minutes of this call, my own phone began buzzing with incoming calls from my father. I silenced it, not yet ready for that conversation. This moment of reckoning had been years in the making, and I needed to see it through without interference. Back in the boutique, Sophia appeared to be growing more distressed. Her gestures became more animated, likely promising the staff that payment would be forthcoming. The manager's expression remained sympathetic but firm. Retail establishments had policies about holding unpaid merchandise, especially items as expensive as wedding gowns. Sophia made another call, this one briefer. Moments later, my phone lit up with her name on the screen. Like my father's calls, I let it go to voicemail. Whatever justifications or accusations she wanted to hurl at me would have to wait. For once, she would experience the consequences of her behavior without me rushing in to smooth things over. After 15 minutes of increasingly desperate phone calls, Sophia appeared to be running out of options. The staff had been patient, but their body language suggested that patience was wearing thin. My sister's expression had transformed from confidence to panic to something approaching genuine despair. Part of me, the part that had automatically come to her rescue since childhood, felt a pang of guilt. But the healthier part, the part that had finally found its voice, reminded me that this moment was necessary. Sometimes, respect can only be established through clear boundaries and consequences. As I watched this scene unfold, I realized I had two choices. I could continue observing from a distance, or I could step forward and confront the situation directly. After a moment's consideration, I decided it was time to emerge from the shadows. This confrontation was inevitable, and I preferred to have it on my terms rather than being ambushed later. With a deep breath to steady my nerves, I stepped out of my car and crossed the street toward the boutique, ready to face whatever came next. The bell above the door chimed softly as I entered Elegance Bridal for the second time that day. All heads turned in my direction, but none with more shock than my sister's. Sophia stood frozen by the register, her face a mask of disbelief, quickly morphing into understanding and then fury. "You canceled the card," she demanded, her voice echoing through the boutique. "How could you?" I approached calmly, maintaining eye contact despite the thundering of my heart. The store staff discreetly created space around us, professional enough to give the illusion of privacy while remaining within earshot. "Yes, I did," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I had expected. "The same way you could slap me in public over a color suggestion." Sophia's face flushed. "That has nothing to do with this. You are ruining everything." "Actually, it has everything to do with this," I countered. "Respect and support go hand in hand, Sophia. You cannot expect one without giving the other." She stared at me, momentarily speechless, before recovering with renewed indignation. "I thought you loved me. How can you do this to me right before my wedding?" The manipulation tactic was so familiar it almost made me smile. This time, however, it held no power over me. "Love does not mean accepting mistreatment," I said. "It definitely does not involve physical assault over bridesmaid dresses." Vivian, who had been maintaining a professional distance, nodded almost imperceptibly at this. The slap had crossed a line that was evident to everyone except Sophia. "You do not understand," Sophia insisted, shifting to her next tactic, minimization. "It was just a little slap. I was stressed, and you were being impossible." I shook my head. "For 20 years I have put your needs first. I helped raise you after Mom died. I sacrificed my college fund so you could have new clothes and vacations with Dad and Jessica, and now I have been secretly funding this entire wedding because Dad cannot afford it." This revelation landed like a bombshell in the boutique. Sophia's eyes widened as she processed the information. "That is not true," she whispered, though with less conviction than before. "Dad is paying for everything." "The card you have been using is linked to my account, not his," I explained. "Every venue deposit, every vendor payment, every little extravagance has been coming from me, not Dad. He and I arranged it that way because I wanted to give you a beautiful wedding without making you feel obligated to me." Sophia looked genuinely shocked, her certainty visibly crumbling. "But why would Dad lie about that?" "Because he knew he could not afford what you wanted, and he hates disappointing you," I said simply. "And I agreed because despite everything, you are my sister and I wanted you to be happy." The boutique had grown so quiet that the soft background music seemed suddenly intrusive. Sophia glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with having this private family matter exposed in such a public setting. The store staff and remaining customers were trying to appear busy, but were obviously riveted by the unfolding drama. Sophia lowered her voice, stepping closer to me. "We need to discuss this privately. Can you just fix the card situation so I can get my dresses, and we can talk about the rest later? Her attempt to delay consequences while securing what she wanted was so characteristic that I almost laughed. No, I said firmly. I am done enabling behavior that hurts me. If you want my financial support, you need to demonstrate that you value me as a person, not just as a walking ATM. Sophia's face hardened, her temporary vulnerability replaced by calculation. Fine, she said, pulling out her phone. I am calling Dad and Jessica right now. They will sort this out. She made the call on speaker, perhaps, hoping to intimidate me with reinforcements. When our father answered, Sophia immediately launched into a distorted version of events, painting herself as the victim of my sudden and inexplicable cruelty. Dad, you need to come to Elegance Bridal right away, she demanded. Kirsten has lost her mind. She canceled the credit card, and now she is claiming she has been paying for my wedding all along. I could almost see my father wilting through the phone. His voice came through tired and strained. Sophia, please calm down. Let me speak with Kirsten. Before I could respond, Sophia continued. You need to tell her to fix this right now. My dresses are being held hostage. In the background of the call, I heard Jessica's voice asking questions, followed by my father's muffled explanation. Then Jessica came on the line, her voice sharp with accusation. What is going on, Kirsten? How could you do this to your sister? I remained calm, refusing to be baited into an emotional response. I have been funding Sophia's entire wedding with the understanding that I would be treated with basic respect. Today, she slapped me in public over a color suggestion. I have decided that my financial support is contingent on being treated like a human being, not a resource to be exploited. Jessica scoffed audibly. You are being ridiculously sensitive. Sophia is under tremendous pressure planning this wedding. The wedding that I am paying for, I reminded her. A fact that everyone seems to conveniently forget when it comes to how I am treated. My father's voice returned conciliatory and pleading. Kirsten, please. We can discuss this as a family. Just reinstate the card for now so Sophia can get her dresses. We will work everything out, I promise. The familiar pattern was playing out exactly as expected. Sophia behaves badly. Family pressures me to overlook it. Nothing changes. Not this time. Dad, I said firmly, I love you, but no. I am setting a boundary. No respect, no wedding fund. It is that simple. A charged silence followed. Sophia stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and dawning recognition that I was serious. Our father sighed heavily through the phone. We will be there in 15 minutes, he said finally. Do not do anything until we arrive. The call ended, leaving Sophia and me in tense silence amid the awkward atmosphere of the boutique. Vivian approached cautiously, her professional demeanor slightly strained by the unusual circumstances. Would you ladies like to wait in our private lounge while this is being resolved? She offered diplomatically. I thanked her for the suggestion, but Sophia interjected before we could move. What about my dresses? She demanded. Can you at least hold them until this is sorted out? Vivian explained that they could hold the items for 24 hours, but after that, they would need to be released back to the floor, particularly the sample bridesmaid dress that other clients might want to view. This is a nightmare, Sophia muttered, sinking into one of the plush chairs in the waiting area. My wedding is ruined. I considered pointing out that only the excessive spending was ruined, not the marriage itself, but chose to remain silent. Some realizations need to be reached independently. As promised 15 minutes later, our father and Jessica arrived at the boutique. Dad looked haggard, the strain of maintaining the financial fiction, clearly taking its toll. Jessica, by contrast, entered like a storm front, her expression thunderous as she immediately went to console Sophia. This is completely unacceptable, Jessica declared, glaring at me over Sophia's shoulder. You cannot just pull funding weeks before the wedding. Do you have any idea how much work has already gone into planning? I met her gaze steadily. Do you have any idea how much money I have already contributed? Or how your daughter spoke to me today, let alone slapped me across the face? Jessica dismissed this with a wave. Families have disagreements all the time. You are being vindictive over something minor. My father, ever the peacemaker, attempted to mediate, Perhaps we could step outside and discuss this privately, he suggested, glancing uncomfortably at the boutique staff. Before we could move, the boutique door opened again, and Jeremy entered looking concerned and slightly out of breath. Sophia had apparently texted him during the confrontation. "What is going on?" he asked, taking in the tense tableau before him. "I got a message saying there was some emergency with the wedding." Sophia immediately rushed to his side, tears flowing freely now. "Kirsten is trying to ruin our wedding," she cried. "She canceled the payment for my dresses and says she is not paying for anything else." Jeremy looked confused, glancing between Sophia and my father. "I thought your dad was covering the wedding costs." An uncomfortable silence fell, as my father shifted his weight from one foot to another, unable to meet Jeremy's questioning gaze. In that moment I felt a surge of sympathy for my future brother-in-law, who was clearly being kept in the dark about significant financial matters affecting his marriage. "Actually," I spoke up, "I have been funding the entire wedding. Dad and I arranged it so that Sophia would believe he was paying, but the money has been coming from my accounts all along." Jeremy's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to something resembling respect, as he looked at me. "You have been paying for everything, all of it." I nodded, uncomfortable with his evident surprise and appreciation, especially given the circumstances. "It was supposed to be a gift," I explained. "A way to give Sophia her dream day, without making her feel indebted to me personally." Jeremy turned to Sophia, his expression now troubled. "Why did no one tell me this? We have been planning all these expensive additions, and I had no idea your sister was covering the costs." Sophia, caught between tears and indignation, stammered, "I did not know either. Dad told me he was paying." My father finally spoke up, his voice heavy with regret. "It was my idea not to tell you, sweetheart. I knew I could not afford what you wanted, but Kirsten could. She generously offered to help, and I was too proud to admit I could not give you the wedding you deserved." Jessica's expression had transformed during this exchange, the realization of whose money had been funding her stepdaughter's extravagances finally sinking in. Her voice lost some of its previous edge, as she asked, "How much has already been spent?" "Nearly $30,000, I answered, with about another $50,000 committed for upcoming payments. The amount hung in the air between us, the scale of my financial contribution finally made concrete. Jeremy whistled softly, clearly, processing the implications. "And you were just going to pay for all of it without Sophia ever knowing?" Jeremy asked, his tone somewhere between admiration and disbelief. "That was the plan," I confirmed, "until today." Sophia, perhaps sensing the shift in the room's dynamics, attempted to regain control of the narrative. "So what now?" she demanded, though, with less force than before. "Are you really going to ruin my wedding over one little fight?" I took a deep breath, knowing my next words would set the course for our relationship moving forward. "I am not ruining your wedding, Sophia. I am establishing that my support, financial or otherwise, requires basic respect in return. The choice is yours now." Sophia's face hardened, her momentary vulnerability replaced by stubborn pride. "Fine," she declared. "If you want to be like that, then I do not want you at my wedding at all. We will figure something out without your help." Despite anticipating this response, the finality of her words still stung. I nodded, once accepting her decision. "All right," I said simply. "I wish you and Jeremy happiness." With that, I turned and walked out of the boutique, leaving my family to deal with the fallout of decades of enabling behavior. As the door closed behind me, I heard Jeremy's voice raised in question, Jessica's defensive response, and my father's weary attempts to mediate. For the first time in my adult life, I was walking away from a family crisis, rather than sacrificing my own well-being to fix it. The feeling was both terrifying and exhilarating, like stepping off a cliff and discovering I could fly. The next week passed in a blur of chaos, all observed from my newly established distance. My phone exploded with messages and calls, which I answered selectively. Family members alternated between blaming me for the wedding disaster and attempting to persuade me to reconsider. Friends I hadn't heard from in years suddenly reached out, having heard various distorted versions of the story through Sophia's social media meltdown. I maintained my position calmly and clearly. I was willing to contribute financially to a more reasonable wedding, but only if Sophia acknowledged her behavior and committed to treating me with respect. The ball was in her court. Meanwhile, I focused on my own healing. I scheduled additional therapy sessions, implementing techniques to process the guilt and anxiety that had been my constant companions for decades. I took a long weekend at a lakeside cabin, enjoying the quiet and solitude. I reconnected with old friends who had no stake in my family drama. To my surprise, Jeremy contacted me privately, a week after the boutique showdown. Over coffee, at a neutral location, he apologized for his part in the excessive spending and expressed genuine concern about the family dynamics he was marrying into. His eyes had been opened, he explained, not just to Sophia's treatment of me, but to patterns he had previously overlooked or excused. As our conversation concluded, he mentioned casually that Sophia had been unusually quiet since the confrontation, spending hours looking through old family photos and videos. I made no comment but privately wondered if just perhaps some introspection was finally occurring. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. 3 weeks after the bridal shop confrontation, an unexpected knock at my door broke the peaceful Sunday afternoon silence. Through the peephole, I saw Sophia standing alone, missing her usual polished appearance. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, looking younger and somehow more like the sister I remembered from childhood. For a moment I considered not answering, still raw from the weeks of family drama. But curiosity and a small persistent hope won out. I opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. "Hi," she said softly, her usual confidence noticeably absent. "Can we talk?" I gestured her inside without comment, leading her to my living room where we sat on opposite ends of the sofa, the physical distance mirroring the emotional gap between us. The first few minutes were filled with awkward small talk. Sophia commented on my apartment, which she had rarely visited, noticing the framed photography I had taken up as a hobby. I offered her tea, which she accepted more out of politeness than desire. Finally, she set down her untouched mug and faced me directly. "I owe you an apology," she said the words, coming out in a rush as if she feared losing courage. "I have been horrible to you, not just at the bridal shop but for years." The directness of her admission caught me off guard. I had expected justifications or qualified apologies, not this straightforward acknowledgement. "What I did was wrong," she continued. "Slapping you was completely unacceptable. But it is more than that. I have taken you for granted, dismissed your feelings, and treated you like you did not matter. And then I found out you were funding my entire wedding, I feel." She paused, searching for the right word. "Ashamed," she finally said. "I feel ashamed of how I have acted." I remained silent, letting her words settle between us, not rushing to ease her discomfort or offer absolution. This was a moment years in the making, and I wanted to honor its significance by giving it space. After a moment, Sophia continued, her voice steadier. "When Dad finally told me the whole truth about the wedding funding, I was shocked. But even then, my first reaction was anger that you had canceled the card, not gratitude for everything you had already paid for." She shook her head, seemingly at her own behavior. "It took Jeremy threatening to call off the wedding entirely to make me really look at myself." This revelation surprised me. Jeremy had mentioned concerns during our coffee meeting, but not an ultimatum of this magnitude. He said he could not marry someone who would treat their own sister that way, especially after everything you had done for me, Sophia explained. He asked if this was how I would treat our children someday, when they disappointed me. A tear slipped down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. That question hit me hard. I started thinking about Mom, about how you stepped in after she died, about all the times you put me first. Somewhere along the way I started seeing that as my right, rather than your choice. Her vulnerability seemed genuine, lacking the manipulative quality that had characterized many of our previous interactions. I found myself softening slightly, though still guarded. "What do you want, Sophia?" I asked quietly. She met my gaze directly. "First, for you to know how truly sorry I am. And second, she took a deep breath to ask if you would consider being part of my wedding again, not as a financier but as my sister. My maid of honor, actually." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by this reversal. Why the change? Sophia twisted her engagement ring nervously. When I really thought about who has actually been there for me consistently throughout my life, it is you, not Megan, not Jessica, you. She hesitated before adding, I also wanted to tell you that Jeremy and I have completely replanned the wedding. We are scaling everything back significantly. No imported flowers or custom lighting. Just something meaningful that we can mostly pay for ourselves. I considered her words carefully, trying to determine their sincerity. The practical changes to the wedding plans suggested a level of genuine reflection that simple words could not convey. It was not just Jeremy Sophia, added perhaps reading my skepticism. Dad and I have been really talking for the first time in years. And I found this. She reached into her bag and pulled out a weathered photo album I did not recognize. Opening it, she revealed photographs I had never seen our mother pregnant with Sophia, me as a toddler, gently touching her swollen belly, and later me, at 14 awkwardly cradling newborn Sophia, while our mother looked on with evident pride. Where did you find these? I asked, gently touching the plastic-covered images. In the attic storage. I was looking for some of Mom's things, trying to connect with memories of her, and found this album she had put together. She wrote notes on the back of many photos. Sophia turned one over carefully to reveal our mother's handwriting. Kirsten has such a natural way with the baby. She is going to be the best big sister any child could ask for. The sight of our mother's handwriting after so many years brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Sophia continued, turning pages, showing more photos and notes, documenting our early relationship before grief and family dynamics had complicated everything. I never realized how much you did for me even before Mom died, Sophia said softly. And after when you were just a kid yourself having to step up. I have been thinking about how that must have felt having to be the responsible one while I got to just be a child. Her insight surprised me. This level of empathy and self-awareness was new from my sister. Jeremy and I have also started going to counseling together, she added. And I was hoping, maybe you and I could try family therapy too, maybe with Dad sometimes as well. The request was so unexpected, and yet so exactly what was needed, that I found myself nodding before I had consciously decided to agree. Yes, I think that might help, I said cautiously. We talked for nearly 3 hours that afternoon, covering ground that had been left untouched for decades. There were difficult moments when old defenses threatened to resurface, but also breakthrough instances of genuine connection. By the time Sophia left, we had agreed to weekly sister dinners and bi-weekly family therapy sessions, starting with just the two of us, and eventually including our father. The wedding planning began anew this time, with a more reasonable budget of $15,000. Sophia and Jeremy would contribute the majority with smaller amounts from our father and me. More importantly, the focus shifted from material extravagance to meaningful celebration. The garden venue remained, but instead of imported blooms, local seasonal flowers filled simple arrangements. The guest list was cut by half limited to people who truly mattered in their lives. I helped Sophia sell the original designer wedding gown she had selected and find a lovely alternative at a fraction of the cost. Together we discovered that creativity and thoughtfulness could create beauty that money alone could not buy. The wedding day itself arrived 4 months later than originally planned, a perfect early autumn afternoon that required no expensive climate control or backup tents. Standing beside Sophia as her maid of honor, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, residual caution from years of difficult dynamics, genuine happiness for her new beginning with Jeremy, and tentative hope for our healing relationship. During her vows, Sophia included an unexpected line that brought tears to my eyes. I promised to build our relationship on mutual respect and genuine care, knowing now that love without these foundations cannot truly flourish. Later during the reception, she surprised me further by taking the microphone during dinner. I have a special thank you to make, she announced to the gathering of loved ones. My sister Kirsten has not only stood by me today, but has stood by me my entire life, often without the recognition or gratitude she deserved. Her strength and moral compass helped me become someone worthy of the love I have found with Jeremy. She paused, meeting my eyes across the room. Thank you for never giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. The simple acknowledgement delivered publicly and sincerely healed something deep within me that I had not realized was still broken. Our relationship continued to evolve in the months following the wedding. The therapy sessions uncovered layers of unresolved grief about our mother misunderstandings that had calcified into resentments and family patterns that had enabled dysfunctional behavior. None of it was easy, but all of it was necessary. I discovered that setting boundaries did not mean losing relationships, but rather creating healthier ones. I applied this wisdom to other areas of my life, as well addressing some people-pleasing tendencies at work and in friendships that had left me feeling depleted. Sophia and I still had occasional disagreements, but they no longer escalated to personal attacks or silent treatments. We were learning slowly and imperfectly to communicate honestly, while still showing care for each other's feelings. 6 months after the wedding, during one of our now regular sister dinners, Sophia mentioned that she and Jeremy were considering starting a family. As she shared their hopes and plans, she suddenly grew serious. "I want to be the kind of mother who raises children to value relationships over things," she said, her expression thoughtful. "Who teaches them that respect is non-negotiable, not something to be earned through financial leverage or family obligation. I have been thinking a lot about the patterns I do not want to continue." Her self-awareness struck me as perhaps the most meaningful change of all. The healing process had extended beyond our immediate relationship to how she viewed family dynamics more broadly. Looking back on everything now, I realize that the painful confrontation at the bridal shop was actually a gift in disguise. By forcing us to address decades of unhealthy patterns, it created an opportunity for genuine transformation that might otherwise never have occurred. I have learned that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and others is to establish clear boundaries about what treatment we will accept. Love without boundaries becomes enabling a hollow imitation of true connection that ultimately serves no one. The journey continues every day in small choices and conversations, in moments of vulnerability and courage. Our family system is still a work in progress, but now it is progressing rather than stagnating in dysfunctional patterns. If you have ever found yourself sacrificing your own well-being to keep the peace or win someone's approval, know that there is another way. True relationships, the kind worth having, can withstand honesty and boundaries. In fact, they grow stronger because of them. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with family members who were taking you for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries is not selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most beautiful transformations.